Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? The room was loud, paper maps flapping, radios hissing, boots dragging across concrete. A generator throbbed outside, throwing a low, angry hum into the air. Every chair around the steel table was filled with men, captains, sergeants, lieutenants, all speaking at once, all except her. She sat with her back straight, gloved hands folded in her lap, the only woman in the room. No one had asked for her opinion. She stared at the map, at the red circle drawn around the target compound. She could feel the sweat between her shoulder blades even though the room was cold. The commander's voice kept cutting through the noise, barking assignments, handing out call signs like cards at a poker table. When he got to her name, he didn't even look at her. "You'll cover the approach," he said flatly, like he was assigning her kitchen duty. She nodded once. No argument, no protest, just silence. Because there was something she hadn't told them, not yet. Outside, the desert was windless, dead. The horizon shimmered with heat even though night was crawling closer. A dust storm had passed through earlier, leaving the air raw, sharp against the skin. She stepped out of the tent, breathing deep, trying to clear the stale sweat and diesel smell from her lungs. Her rifle was waiting on the bench, wrapped in a weathered cloth like an old secret. She unwrapped it slowly, fingers moving with quiet reverence. It wasn't just a weapon, it was memory. Her father had taught her to shoot before she was tall enough to reach the workbench on her own. The first time she hit a target at 500 meters, he hadn't smiled. He just nodded, proud in that quiet way that meant everything. That was before the war, before she buried him. She checked the rifle one last time, wiping sand from the scope. The glass caught the sunset, burning gold, as if the weapon was looking back at her. A shadow fell over her. Still tuning that thing. It was Morales, the youngest of the squad. He leaned against the wall, chewing a toothpick, trying to look casual. His tone was teasing but not cruel. "Always," she said. He hesitated, then nodded toward the rifle. "You're good with it, heard stories." She didn't answer. Stories had a way of getting twisted out here. Some called her lucky, others called her cursed. Morales shrugged, pushed off the wall. "We step at 200, try to get some rack time." She just nodded again. But she wouldn't sleep. She never did the night before a mission. When 200 came, the desert was so dark it felt like another planet. The moon was a thin sickle, barely throwing light over the dunes. The convoy moved like ghosts, engines muffled, headlights blacked out. Every bump in the dirt road rattled through her bones. The target compound sat in a shallow valley, squat and silent. From a distance, it looked like a handful of dark stones scattered across the sand. But she knew better. Inside those walls were men who wouldn't hesitate to kill them all. She moved ahead alone, climbing the rocky ridge to the overwatch point. The ground crunched softly under her boots, every sound amplified in the silence. Her breathing sounded too loud inside her own head. At the top, she lay flat, dug her elbows into the sand, brought the rifle to her shoulder. The world shrank to the scope's circle. Through the glass, the compound came alive. Figures moved inside the courtyard. Shadows shifted in windows. A door opened, spilling yellow light onto the ground. She adjusted her breathing, slow, even, the way her father had taught her. Then she saw him. One of the men stepped into the light, speaking to another. He had a scar across his cheek, running from his eye to his jaw. She knew that face. She'd seen it before on a briefing slide, on a wanted board, in grainy surveillance photos. And somewhere else. She blinked hard. Her finger hovered near the trigger but didn't touch it. Her stomach knotted, cold as ice water. "Not him, not tonight." Over the radio, the commander's voice crackled. "Overwatch, report." She swallowed hard, keyed her mic. "Eyes on, compound active, no movement outside perimeter." Her voice was calm, steady. No one could hear the storm building in her chest. The assault team crept into position below. Their shadows stretched long across the sand, merging with the night. She tracked them through her scope, breath catching when one nearly kicked a loose rock. Then it happened. A figure appeared on the roof of the compound, shouldering a weapon. "Roof," she whispered into the mic, already adjusting, already aiming. The man didn't see them, not yet. Her finger curled against the trigger. The shot broke the night. The man dropped before he could shout. "Move," the commander barked. The team surged forward, breaching the compound. The silence shattered shouts, gunfire, boots pounding on dirt. She stayed on the scope, cutting down threats before they even saw the assault team coming. But every time her crosshairs passed the man with the scar, she hesitated. She couldn't explain why. Not yet. Minutes stretched into hours. When the last shot echoed away, the compound was theirs. Smoke curled from broken doors. The team regrouped, breath ragged, faces streaked with sweat and dust. "Clear," someone said over the radio. But she stayed where she was, lying flat on the ridge, staring through the scope at the courtyard. The man with the scar was gone. Her heart thudded. When the commander came over comms, his voice was grim. "We missed one. Our guy slipped." She didn't say a word. Because deep down, she wasn't sure she wanted them to catch him. Not yet. When she finally descended the ridge, Morales was waiting near the convoy, helmet off, hair plastered to his forehead. "Good work tonight," he said, but his voice was softer than usual, like he could tell something was off. She just nodded, because silence was easier than explaining. As the trucks rumbled back toward base, she sat in the last vehicle, rifle across her knees, staring into the endless desert. In her mind, she saw the man with the scar again. And for the first time in years, she let herself remember the night her father died. Why didn't she take the shot? The question echoed in her head all night. Through the convoy ride back, through the weapon cleaning, through the brief after-action debrief where everyone congratulated each other and clapped backs. No one asked her why she missed. Because officially she hadn't. Her confirmed kills were logged. Her shots were clean. No one knew about the ones she didn't take. When she finally lay down on her cot, boots still on, she stared at the tent ceiling and thought about the scarred man's face. About how his head would have snapped back if she had squeezed the trigger. How the desert would have swallowed the sound of his fall. Her finger twitched against an invisible trigger. But she didn't regret it. Not yet. The base woke slowly with the sunrise. Sand in the air made the light come soft and golden, turning every shadow long and tired. Someone's radio played faint country music, almost swallowed by the sound of rotors warming up at the helipad. She sat on the steps outside, mug of bitter coffee in her hands, watching the flight line. The air smelled of oil and hot metal. Morales sat down beside her without asking. "You don't sleep," he said quietly. She shrugged. He studied her face. "You ever wonder what we're doing out here?" She turned to him. "What do you mean?" He gestured at the horizon, endless and empty. "I mean, we clear a compound, they move somewhere else. We take out one guy, another takes his place. Feels like we're patching holes in a sinking boat." She didn't answer, not right away. Because she had wondered that every night. "I'm not here to save the world," she said finally, "just the people next to me." Morales nodded slowly, like he wanted to believe her. Later they were called back to the briefing room. Another map, another red circle. The commander's voice was tight, clipped. "He's on the move," he said, stabbing a finger at the satellite image. "We have one shot to intercept. We don't get another." Her chest tightened. The scarred man. This time, they would expect her to take the shot. The room buzzed with energy. Plans were made, routes chosen, roles assigned. She barely heard it. All she could hear was the sound of her own breathing, shallow and uneven. When the meeting broke, She stayed behind, staring at the map. Problem. The voice came from behind her, the commander. She straightened, face unreadable. No, sir. He studied her a long moment. You're good. One of the best I've seen. Don't let whatever's in your head slow you down. She nodded because words would have betrayed her. That night, as she prepared her kit, she found herself hesitating over her rifle. She ran her fingers over the metal, tracing the faint scratches near the stock. The marks were from another time, another mission. The one where her father had died. He hadn't been military. He'd been a contractor, a quiet man who fixed things. He had gone out one day to repair a generator on the edge of a small town and never came back. When she found out who had led the attack that killed him, she had enlisted. The name on the report had been simple, a local warlord. The same man she had seen last night. Her throat went dry. She had dreamed for years of finding him, of ending him. And when the moment came, she had frozen. Not out of fear. Out of something worse. What if killing him didn't fix anything? What if it didn't bring her father back? What if the only thing she got from it was emptiness? She closed the rifle case and sat down hard on the cot. Her hands were trembling. The mission went out at midnight. This time she rode in silence, helmet visor down, face hidden. No one tried to talk to her. The vehicle stopped short of the target. The team moved on foot, slow and careful, boots crunching softly in the dark. The air was cooler tonight, a breeze whispering through the scrub brush. She found her position on a low ridge. Prone again, rifle steady, breath shallow. Through the scope, the world came alive. There he was, the man with the scar. Closer this time. He was talking to someone, gesturing, angry. His hands were scarred too, calloused, the hands of a man who had lived his whole life in hard places. Her finger found the trigger. Slow breath, slow squeeze. Then a child stepped into the light. A little girl. Her chest went cold. The girl clung to the man's leg, hiding her face. Her finger froze. Over comms, the commander's voice was a low growl. Take the shot, now. Her breath hitched. She couldn't. Not with the child there. Seconds stretched. Overwatch, do you copy? Her hand tightened on the mic. Negative, shot obstructed. The silence on the radio was heavy. Then hold position. Below, the assault team waited, restless, tense. The scarred man finished speaking, turned, and disappeared into a truck. She watched him drive away, her scope tracking the dust cloud until it was gone. Target escaped, the commander said flatly. When they regrouped, no one spoke to her. Morales glanced at her once but said nothing. Back at base, she stayed behind while the others went to the mess hall. She sat on the steps again, staring at nothing. Her rifle leaned against the wall beside her. She had never felt so heavy. When Morales finally came back, he crouched in front of her. You had the shot, he said quietly. She didn't answer. You hesitated, he said. She looked at him. Would you have taken it with the kid there? He didn't answer right away. His jaw tightened. That's not for me to say. She looked back at the horizon. I thought I knew what I wanted, she said. Her voice was soft, almost lost in the wind. But I don't, not anymore. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then Morales sat down beside her. And for once, he didn't try to fill it with words. She woke to shouting. The base was alive, frantic. Radios barked, boots pounded the dirt, vehicles revved. She grabbed her rifle and stepped outside into the morning glare. A convoy had been hit overnight, one of theirs, ambushed on a supply route just 10 kilometers from where they'd been last night. 2 dead, 3 wounded. The commander's voice was sharp as broken glass as he gave orders. Patrols doubled, perimeters tightened. No one looked at her, but she could feel it anyway. If she'd taken the shot, would those men still be alive? Her stomach turned. She found Morales near the motor pool, helping load crates of ammo. His face was set, jaw tight. "You heard?" she asked. He nodded. "Two of them were kids," he said quietly. "First deployment." Her throat closed. He didn't have to say the rest. If she'd done her job, maybe they wouldn't have died. But then she saw the little girl again, her small hands clutching the scarred man's leg, and she didn't know what was worse, the guilt of the dead or the image of a child watching her father fall. She spent the day on the range, shooting until her shoulder ached, until the world narrowed to the sound of brass hitting the dirt. Every round was perfect, dead center. But when she closed her eyes, all she saw was dust and a man walking away. That night the commander called her in. The tent was empty except for him, a single lamp throwing hard shadows across the table. He didn't yell. He didn't have to. "You had him," he said. "We don't get many clean windows out here, and you let him walk twice." She said nothing. He leaned forward. "You want to tell me why?" Her mouth opened and closed. What could she say? That she'd joined this war to avenge a man and then lost her nerve. That she'd seen a child and couldn't pull the trigger. She just shook her head. The commander's eyes were cold. "We all live with ghosts out here. Don't make the mistake of letting yours get more of us killed." When she left the tent, the night air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on her chest. She found Morales near the perimeter wall, sitting on an ammo crate, helmet off, cigarette glowing between his fingers. "You ever think about leaving?" she asked. He gave a bitter laugh. "Every damn day, but what would I go back to? Who'd I be if I wasn't this?" She sat beside him. For a while they didn't speak. The desert was so quiet it felt like the whole world was holding its breath. Then he said softly, "You know, you're not the only one who hesitates." She turned to him. "My first mission," he said, staring out at the darkness, "I had a guy in my sights, real bad guy, the kind you read about in intel briefs and think, someone should take him out. And there I was, finger on the trigger, and I froze, couldn't do it. Someone else took the shot." She waited. "Afterward I hated myself," he said, "but I learned something. Sometimes that hesitation, it means you're still human." She didn't know whether to thank him or curse him for saying that. The next day brought more intel. The scarred man was moving again, but this time not just with his fighters. He was gathering civilians, families. A relocation or a shield. No one knew. The commander's plan was simple: cut them off before they reached the safe zone, force a confrontation. The convoy rolled out at dawn. She watched the desert roll past, the horizon flat and endless, as if they were driving into the center of the earth. When they reached the intercept point, the team dismounted and spread out. She took the high ground again, heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Dust rose in the distance. Drugs. Through the scope she saw them, the fighters armed and alert, the scarred man standing in the back of a pickup, scanning the horizon. And there the girl, sitting between two women, clutching a rag doll. Her breath caught. "Overwatch," the commander's voice crackled. She keyed the mic, eyes on. "Target." She hesitated. "Yes," she said finally. The order came: disable the vehicle, take him alive if possible. She adjusted her aim, centering the crosshairs on the engine block. Slow breath, squeeze. The round punched through metal and the truck jerked to a halt. Fighters spilled out, shouting, weapons up. Gunfire erupted. The world exploded into chaos. She tracked targets, firing, shifting, firing again. The air was full of dust and smoke and shouting. Then she saw him. The scarred man was running away from the fight, toward the women and children. He grabbed the girl, pulled her behind cover. And for a split second, their eyes met. Even at 300 meters, she could see it. Recognition. Not of a soldier. Of her. As if he knew why she was there. Her finger tightened and then stopped. He wasn't fighting. He was shielding the child with his own body. Overwatch, the commander's voice was urgent. You have him. Her hands shook. If she fired, the girl might die. If she didn't, more of her people might. The decision hung in the air like the last breath before a storm. Then a round cracked past her head, close enough to make her ears ring. She rolled, scanning for the shooter. A flash. She fired back. The enemy rifleman dropped. When she looked through the scope again, the scarred man was gone. Target lost, she shouted into the mic. Silence. Then the commander swore, raw and loud. The firefight wound down minutes later. Smoke hung in the air. Bodies lay still in the dust. But not his. When they regrouped, the commander's anger was cold and controlled. You had him, he said. She said nothing. Because what could she say? That every time she saw him, the rage in her chest burned less, not more. That she didn't know if she wanted revenge anymore, or if she even deserved it. Back at base, Morales found her sitting alone again. You're gonna have to decide, he said quietly. Decide what? Who you are, he said. Out here you don't get to be halfway. You pull the trigger or you don't, but you live with it either way. She looked at him, and for the first time, she wasn't sure which choice would break her more. She couldn't get his eyes out of her head. The way he had looked at her, not like a soldier at an enemy, not like prey at a predator, but like a man who knew exactly who she was. As if he knew she was there for him. Sleep didn't come that night. She lay on her cot, staring at the canvas roof, listening to the bass around her breathe, the hum of generators, the distant bark of dogs, the occasional laughter from the mess tent. Every sound made her feel further away. At dawn, she found herself sitting on the perimeter wall, helmet in her lap, rifle slung across her back. The sky was pale and fragile, as if the desert had been holding its breath all night. She heard boots crunching behind her. Morales, you're gonna wear a hole in the ground if you keep packing, he said softly, sitting beside her. She didn't look at him. They're saying he's regrouping, he went on, pulling together whatever fighters he's got left. If he's planning to hit us, it'll be soon. Her stomach twisted. Good, a part of her thought. Because that would mean no more hesitation, no more choices. It would be simple, one of them would walk away. But then she remembered the girl. And suddenly, nothing felt simple. The commander called them in just after sunrise. His face was carved from stone. We have intel on his location, he said, pointing at a fresh satellite image. Safe house in the foothills, remote. We hit it tonight before he moves again. The room buzzed with low voices. Someone swore under his breath. This is it, the commander said. We get him this time, no excuses. His eyes locked on her when he said it. The words landed like a stone in her gut. She left the tent without speaking. She spent the day prepping her gear with mechanical precision, wiping down the rifle, rechecking every magazine, every strap, every buckle. Her hands moved calmly, but her chest felt like it was caving in. She could feel Morales watching her from across the tent. You ready? He asked quietly. She didn't answer, because she wasn't sure. When the convoy rolled out at nightfall, the desert was sharp and cold, the stars burning white overhead. The ride was silent except for the rattle of gear and the occasional hiss of radio chatter. She sat in the back, staring at her gloved hands, flexing them slowly. By the time they reached the foothills, her heart was hammering. The safe house was a dark smudge against the rocky slope, half hidden by scrub and stone. A single lantern glowed faintly in one of the windows. She moved to her position, prone behind a cluster of rocks. The world narrowed to the circle of her scope again. Inside, she could see shadows moving, men with rifles, the scarred man among them calm, composed, giving orders. And then, the girl. She was sitting in the corner, hugging her knees, eyes wide. Her throat closed. The commander's voice crackled in her ear. Overwatch, confirm visual. Confirmed, she said. Her voice sounded far away, even to herself. Hold until breach. The team crept closer. She watched them through the scope, tracking their movements, every step, every hand signal. Then a light flared inside the safe house, too bright, too sudden. Her gut dropped. They knew. Go, the commander barked. The team charged. The night erupted, gunfire, shouting, the stutter of automatic weapons. She fired, precise, controlled, cutting down threats before they could pin the team down. Then the scarred man appeared in the doorway, rifle in hand. He wasn't running this time. He was fighting. And she had a clean shot. Her finger curled. She saw the girl just behind him, pressed against the wall, terrified. Her breath faltered. A burst of fire tore across the courtyard, striking one of the assault team. He went down hard. Man down, someone shouted. Overwatch, take the shot. Her vision tunneled. The scarred man swung his rifle toward Morales, who was crossing the open ground to drag the wounded man to cover. She didn't think. She fired. The shot struck the wall just inches from the man's head. He jerked back, dragging the girl with him into the house. Negative hit, the commander's voice was raw. Morales hauled the wounded man into cover, shouting for a medic. Gunfire roared back and forth for what felt like forever. And then silence. The house was clear. Except for him. And the girl. They were gone. Again. When the team regrouped, the commander didn't speak to her, didn't even look at her. On the ride back, Morales sat across from her, helmet off, face streaked with dust and sweat. You missed, he said quietly. She didn't answer. You don't miss, he said. Her chest felt like it was on fire. I saw the kid, she said finally, voice hoarse. Morales stared at her a long moment. Then he said softly, you're not gonna be able to save her. You know that, right? She looked away. Because she didn't know that. And she didn't know if she could live with herself if she stopped trying. Back at base, the commander called her in again. He didn't yell this time either. You're done, he said quietly. I can't trust you to do the job. You're off Overwatch until further notice. She felt something crack deep inside her chest. She left the tent without a word, walked past the barracks, past the motor pool, out to the far edge of the perimeter where the floodlights faded into the desert. And there she stood, staring out at the empty horizon until the stars blurred. They gave her a rifle anyway. Not the long one, not the one that had become almost an extension of her body, but a short carbine, dusty and impersonal, with a sling that bit into her shoulder. She was just another set of boots now. No Overwatch, no high ground, no distance. When the next mission came down, a capture op, high risk, deep into hostile territory, she didn't even have a choice. She was on the manifest as part of the assault team. Morales found her by the trucks, checking her magazines, her face unreadable. You good? He asked quietly. She nodded. He didn't believe her, but he didn't push it. The ride out was rough, the road rutted and narrow, forcing the convoy to crawl. Dust seeped into everything, coating skin, gear, lungs. She kept her head down, helmet visor hiding her eyes. Inside, her thoughts were loud. No scope tonight, no clean angles, no time to think. Maybe that was what she needed. The target was a small compound near the edge of a dry riverbed, one road in, no easy way out. The truck stopped short, lights off. The team dismounted and spread out, boots crunching softly on the sand. She felt exposed without the ridge, without the scope, without the familiar weight of distance. Her heart thudded hard as they closed in. The first breach was fast. A flash, a shout, boots through the door. She went in second. The air inside was hot and stifling, reeking of sweat and burned cooking fuel. Voices shouted, feet scrambled. She turned a corner and froze. He was there. The scarred man. Not through glass this time, not a distant shadow. Close enough that she could see the sweat on his face, the white edge of the scar that ran across his cheek. His rifle was in his hands, but it wasn't pointed at her. It was pointed at the window, covering someone outside. The girl. She was crouched just beyond the sill, crying quietly. For a split second, the world went still. Her training screamed at her, "Drop him now." But she didn't move. He saw her hesitation, his dark eyes locking with hers. And then he lowered his weapon. She blinked. He didn't run, didn't fight. He just put the rifle down slowly, like he'd made his decision. "Clear," someone shouted from the next room. Boots pounded behind her. Morales appeared, rifle raised, breath ragged. "Target secure," he barked. She swallowed hard. "Yes." Two more operators grabbed the scarred man, forced him to the ground, zip-tied his wrists. He didn't resist. Outside, the girl cried harder as someone pulled her away from the window. "Who is she?" Morales asked quietly. She didn't answer, because she didn't know how. The exfil was rough gunfire chasing them out of the valley, rounds snapping past, dust boiling around their boots. She stayed close to the girl, shielding her as they ran. The child's small hand clung to her vest, nails digging into the fabric. By the time they reached the trucks, the girl was shaking, eyes wide and glassy. "Civilians go to holding," one of the team said flatly. "No," she said, sharper than she meant to. The man frowned. "Orders." "She's a kid," she said. The commander's voice cut through the commotion. "Get her on the truck. We'll sort it at base." On the ride back, the girl didn't say a word. She just stared at her. And for the first time since this started, she felt like she was the one being judged. When they reached base, the scarred man was taken straight to the holding cells. The girl was taken to the med tent, checked for injuries, given water. She stayed with her, sat on the cot beside her while the medics worked, while the girl clutched that ragged doll like a lifeline. When they were done, the girl finally spoke. One word. Her father's name. It hit her like a round to the chest. Because she knew that name. She had read it on a report years ago. Not as a warlord. As a man who had once worked with her father, repairing wells, delivering food to villages, trying to keep the peace before everything burned. Her mouth went dry. The report had called him a defector, a traitor. But now she wondered. What if the report had been wrong? What if everything she had built her war around, every step, every shot, every mission had been aimed at the wrong man? When she finally left the med tent, Morales was waiting outside. "You look like hell," he said gently. She didn't answer, because she was starting to feel something worse than guilt. Doubt. That night she walked alone to the holding cells. The scarred man sat on the bench, wrists bound, head down. When he looked up at her, there was no hate in his eyes. Just tiredness. "Why didn't you run?" she asked quietly. He shrugged, nowhere to go. His English was rough but clear enough. "You killed my father," she said. He held her gaze a long time, then shook his head. "No," he said. Her breath caught. "You were there," she said. "Yes," he said, "but I did not kill him, I buried him." Her throat closed. For a moment the world tilted, like the floor had dropped out from under her. "Then who?" she whispered. He looked away. And suddenly she knew. The enemy she had been hunting all this time, the man she thought she had been avenging, wasn't him at all. It was someone else. Someone they had never caught. Her knees felt weak, because that meant she hadn't been hesitating out of weakness. She had been hesitating because somewhere deep down she knew. She turned and walked out of the cell, heart hammering. Morales found her sitting outside again, head in her hands. "You okay?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "No," she said. But for the first time, there was something in her voice besides anger. There was clarity. Sleep didn't come. She lay on her cot staring at the thin canvas roof, hearing every sound of the base. Boots on gravel, trucks idling, the faint metallic clatter of weapons being cleaned. Her thoughts kept circling back to the cell, to the scarred man's eyes, to the girl's single, shattering word. When dawn finally bled over the horizon, she was already dressed, gear squared away, helmet dangling from her hand. But she didn't head to the trucks. She went to the intel tent. The analyst on duty looked up, surprised. "You're early." "Pull everything we have on the target," she said. Her voice was quiet but firm. The analyst hesitated. "Which one, the detainee?" "Yes." He slid a file across the table, thin, dog-eared, stained with dust. She opened it, scanning quickly. The words were familiar. She'd read them before. High-value target, confirmed responsible for multiple attacks, indirect involvement in aid worker casualties. But there was no proof. No witness statements, no photos, no intercepts tying him directly to the deaths. Just inference. She closed the file and handed it back. "Thanks," she said. Her voice was steady, but inside the doubt was now a roar. When she stepped outside, Morales was waiting. "You're not supposed to be here," he said quietly. "I know." He studied her for a long moment. "You think we've got the wrong guy." She didn't answer, because she wasn't sure yet. But she couldn't let it go. That afternoon, she went back to the med tent. The girl was sitting up now, sipping from a plastic cup. She knelt down beside her. "What's your name?" she asked softly. The girl hesitated, then whispered it. She repeated it carefully, memorizing the shape of it. "Do you know why we brought your father here?" The girl's eyes filled with tears. "Bad men," she said in broken English, "but he is good man." Her throat tightened. "I believe you," she said quietly. And in that moment, she knew what she had to do. That night, she waited until the camp had gone quiet. She walked to the holding cells, her boots silent on the gravel. The guard on duty raised an eyebrow. "Command said no visits after lights out," he said. "Command isn't here," she said flatly. The guard hesitated, then stepped aside. She stepped inside the cell. The scarred man looked up at her, calm. "You believe me now," he said. She nodded once. "Tell me who killed my father." He studied her face for a long time before answering. "Different men," he said finally. "Not me, not my people, outsiders. They wanted war. They made it happen." Her stomach twisted. "Names," she said. He gave them. She recognized one immediately, a rival militia commander, a ghost they'd been chasing for months. Her breath came faster, because now it all fit. Every op, every intel brief. The pattern had been there all along, but no one had looked close enough. No one had wanted to. When she stepped out of the cell, Morales was there again. "You're going to do something stupid, aren't you?" he said quietly. She didn't deny it. "Help me," she said. He exhaled hard. "This isn't just about your dad anymore, is it?" "No," she said. "It's about the mission, the real one." The next morning, she stood in front of the commander's desk, helmet under her arm, file in hand. "Sir, we have the wrong target," she said. The commander frowned. Intel was confirmed by. It was wrong, she cut him off. The man we have in holding, he wasn't responsible for the attacks. We've been hunting the wrong side. The commander's jaw tightened. You're out of line, Sergeant. She didn't back down. With respect, sir, we're about to burn every bridge we have left in this valley. If we hand him over, we'll make an enemy out of the only people who can help us find the real killers. Silence stretched between them. Finally, the commander spoke. You're asking me to go against orders. I'm asking you to finish the mission, she said. The commander's eyes were cold. You get 1 day, he said. 1 day to prove it. After that, we process him. She saluted sharply and left the tent. Outside, Morales was waiting. You get the green light. Not exactly, she said grimly. They had 24 hours to find proof or lose everything. She grabbed her rifle, slung it over her shoulder. This time, it felt heavy in a different way. Not as a weapon, as a responsibility. By nightfall, they were back in the trucks, rolling out toward the hills. Her pulse was steady now, not frantic. Because for the first time in months, she wasn't just pulling a trigger. She was choosing her fight. And that made all the difference. The road felt different this time. Every bump rattled through her, but it wasn't fear that made her heart pound. It was focus. 24 hours. That was all they had to find a ghost who had been slipping through their fingers for months. Morales sat across from her in the back of the truck, helmet on, visor up. His eyes stayed on her face like he was reading every thought. You sure about this? He asked finally. No, she said. But her grip on her rifle was steady. The target area was a cluster of mud brick buildings tucked against a dry hill, half abandoned, half barely holding together. They dismounted quietly, boots crunching in the dust. The team spread out, checking windows, doors, rooftops. She moved slower than the others, every sense straining. And then she saw it, a footprint, fresh in the dust. Smaller than a man's boot. She knelt, running a gloved hand over it. This way, she whispered. They followed the trail to a narrow alley, trash scattered along the walls. Something flickered at the corner of her vision, movement. She raised a fist, signaling halt. The alley was empty, but the air felt charged. She stepped forward carefully, rifle up. And then the shot came. It hit the wall inches from her head, spraying her with fragments of mud brick. Contact, Morales shouted. Gunfire erupted, deafening in the narrow space. She dove behind a broken cart, heart hammering, scanning for the shooter. There, a figure darting between rooftops, fast, agile. She didn't fire. Not yet. Because if she killed him now, the trail would die with him. Cut him off, she yelled. They split, moving through the maze of alleys, closing the net. She took the far side, boots kicking up dust, lungs burning. The shooter vaulted a low wall, scrambling toward a motorbike parked in the shade. She pushed harder, closing the distance. By the time he reached the bike, she was already on him. She hit him low, knocking him off balance, the rifle clattering away. He fought like a cornered animal, teeth bared, hands clawing. But she was stronger. And angrier. By the time Morales caught up, she had him pinned. The man spat in the dust, glaring up at them. And she saw it, the mark on his arm. The same one her father had drawn in his notebooks. The rival militia's crest. Her chest tightened. It was him. The real enemy. Morales zip-tied the man's wrists, hauling him to his feet. You just bought us our proof, Morales muttered. But it wasn't over. Because they still had to get him back. And his friends had heard the gunfire. Shouts rang out, boots pounded. The alleys came alive with voices and movement. Move, she shouted. They ran, dragging the prisoner between them, gunfire snapping at their backs. She returned fire, short controlled bursts, forcing the pursuers to cover. But there were too many of them, and the trucks were still half a mile out. They ducked into a ruined building, hearts hammering. The prisoner sat slumped against the wall, breathing hard, eyes dark with hate. She reloaded, sweat running down her temple. "We're not getting out of here if we stay," Morales said. "I know." The only way was through. They waited for the pause, the brief lull in gunfire, then bolted. She went first, rifle up, firing as she moved. Morales followed, dragging the prisoner. A round tore past her leg, close enough to feel the heat. But she didn't slow down. When they finally reached the trucks, her lungs were on fire, arms shaking. The prisoner was shoved into the back, Morales right behind him. She climbed in last as the trucks roared to life, kicking up a wall of dust. The chase didn't stop until they were clear of the valley. Only then did she let herself breathe. Back at base, she walked straight to the commander's tent, dust still clinging to her face. "Proof," she said simply, shoving the captured man forward. The commander's eyes narrowed. "This had better be worth what you just cost us." She didn't flinch. "Debrief him, run as Prince, you'll see." Hours later, the results came back. The man was exactly who she said he was, responsible for multiple attacks, including the one that had killed her father. The commander didn't apologize. He just gave a curt nod. "You did good work," he said. But she didn't feel good. She felt hollow. Because she had what she wanted, the truth, the name, the man. But the scarred man was still sitting in a cell. And the girl was still waiting for an answer. That night, she walked back to the holding area. The guard didn't stop her this time. The scarred man looked up as she stepped inside. "It wasn't you," she said quietly. He nodded once, like he had known she would come back. "You will let me go?" he asked. Her throat tightened. "I don't know if I can," she said honestly. Because releasing him meant defying the orders that still stood. But keeping him here, handing him over, meant betraying the truth she had just risked everything to find. When she stepped outside, the night was still and heavy, the stars sharp against the black sky. Morales was leaning against the wall, arms crossed. "You've got your proof," he said. "Yeah. So why do you look worse?" She didn't answer. Because she already knew what she had to do next. And it was going to cost her more than she was ready to pay. The camp was quiet when she made her decision. No orders, no permission. Just the sound of distant generators humming, the occasional call over the radio, the smell of diesel and dust. She geared up in silence. Not full kit, just enough to blend in, to look like she was on routine guard duty. Morales caught her on the way to the holding cells. "You're really going to do it," he said softly. She didn't answer. "You know what this means," he pressed. "Yeah," she said. He exhaled hard, glancing at the shadows where other soldiers moved, unaware of what was about to happen. Then he stepped aside. "I didn't see you," he said quietly. She nodded once. Inside, the scarred man was sitting on the bench, head bowed. When he saw her, he stood. "Come on," she said. He blinked, confused. "They will kill me," he said. "Not tonight," she said. She cut the zip ties, handed him a ragged scarf to cover his face. They moved quickly, every step loud in her ears, though the camp was still half asleep. At the outer fence, Morales was waiting. He didn't speak. Just opened the gate. The scarred man slipped into the darkness beyond. The girl was waiting for them near the trucks, wrapped in a blanket. Her small hand slid into his without hesitation. For a moment, he just stared at her like he wasn't sure she was real. Then he knelt, arms going around her, pulling her close. The girl didn't cry this time. She just held him tight, like she'd been waiting forever for this moment. The sight made her throat ache. "You know they'll come after you," she said quietly. He nodded. "Then don't let them catch you." He hesitated. "You could come with us," he said. She shook her head. "This is where I belong." He held her gaze a moment longer, then turned away, the girl's hand still clutched in his. They melted into the night, two small silhouettes swallowed by the desert. She stayed until they were gone from sight. Then she turned and walked back into the camp. No one stopped her. No one spoke. But by morning, the entire base knew. The commander called her in before the sun was fully up. He didn't shout, didn't threaten. He just looked tired. "You disobeyed a direct order," he said. "Yes, sir." "You realize what that means?" "Yes, sir." Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Finally, he sighed. "Turn in your weapon," he said. She placed the carbine on his desk. It felt heavier than it ever had. "You're done here," he said. She nodded once. When she stepped outside, Morales was waiting. He didn't say anything. He just handed her something, her sniper rifle, the one that had been locked away since that night on the ridge. She stared at it throat tight. "I can't," she said. "Yeah," Morales said quietly, "but I figured you should decide what to do with it yourself." She took it carefully, feeling its familiar weight one last time. Then she walked to the edge of camp, past the last row of tents, past the wire. She stood there for a long moment, watching the desert stretch out forever. Then she knelt, dug a shallow trench with her hands and laid the rifle in it. Covered it with sand until it was gone. When she stood, the wind picked up, sweeping the surface smooth, leaving no trace. No sound. No witness. Just silence. She walked back to camp, her hands empty. No one spoke as she packed her things. No one stopped her when she walked past the gate for the last time. She didn't look back. Days later, she was on a transport out of the valley, staring out at the mountains as they receded into the haze. She thought of the girl, of the scarred man, of the life they might have now. She thought of her father, and for the first time, she didn't see the moment of his death. She saw him laughing, fixing a broken pump, his hands dirty, his eyes bright. Her throat tightened, but she smiled. Because maybe that was what he would have wanted. Not revenge. Not blood. Just dignity. When the plane lifted off, she closed her eyes and let the roar of the engines drown everything else out. No words. No speeches. No medals. Just silence. And sometimes that was enough.